Hi everyone, welcome back to Dara Chess Academy. In today's video, I wanted to look over a game that I played in a USCF over-the-board tournament. And this game was played in the 30-minute time control with 5-second delay for each move. So my opponent started with e4. I played c5, the Sicilian. And here my opponent played c3, which is the Alpine Sicilian. And if black continues in a typical manner here with maybe g6, white quickly plays d4 and gets a total control of the center. So what black's typical moves are here is to either play knight f6 in sort of the Alekhine spirit and try to play in this sort of hyper-modern way, pressuring the pawns in the center of the board here. But the other approach here is also based on pressuring the e4 pawn, but here it's playing d5. And the reason why this works is compared to the Scandinavian, the difference is here after e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5. Here in this position, white can play knight to c3 and gain a tempo on the queen, and the queen has to move away, and white gets an extra move to develop. So here, the pawn is essentially on c3 in this line here, where we go c3. Now the knight is no longer able to go to c3, but white is trying to play d4. So they have this drawback that when they capture, here we reach to this position with the pawn on c5 and the pawn on c3, where the knight can't go to c3 and attack the queen here. So this is one of the common ideas when the queen can actually capture here and not get attacked. So in many other openings, this is a common thematic idea. So, but in the game here, so I played d5. And here my opponent didn't play the typical move, e takes d5, which would lead to this IQP position, which means this is an isolated queen pawn here, and eventually we're going to trade off these pawns and play in a manner like this, where black is going to try to play e6, develop all the pieces normally. If the knight attacks the queen, drop back, and then try to steer the game towards the end game where this IQP is going to be weaker in that game after all the pieces are traded off. So that's one of the typical strategic ideas against this isolated queen's pawn here. So here, going back again. So that's the typical ideas here. So e4, c5, c3. So I went d5. And here my opponent played e5, where this is not a very popular move at the master's level, because here black has essentially several options here. The most popular is just to get this sort of position like this, where black gets the bishop out and the knight out and quickly regains this material here like this. So black essentially gets either a French with the bishop out, or a Caro-Kann where black was able to play c5 in one turn instead of typically playing c6 and then c5. So that's one of the typical play in this type of structure here. So here c3, d5, e5. So here my options that I was considering, here I was considering knight c6, and black could also try to transpose to a French defense with the move e6. But instead I played this move d4, which tries to sort of punish white for not playing the immediate capture on d5 and playing d4. So here in this position, it's sort of double-edged because here black is moving a pawn one square forward and not developing any pieces. But on the other hand, white has also done the same. So there's an argument that can be made for this move here. So here my opponent captured on d4. And this is probably not the best move for white here. Maybe better here is to go like knight f3 and try to quickly develop here something like bishop c4. Could be a typical idea here. But instead we had c takes d4, c takes d4, and here my opponent played d3. Which here black has a nice move, so you can pause the video and try to calculate what is the best sequence of moves here for black to play. So here, the move here, if you found the move queen a5, here black wins a pawn, and the game continued with queen takes e5, and black won the pawn through this check. And here we traded queens, and then bishop takes e2, knight c6, knight f3, e5, and here when knight f6, probably easier would have been to go also f6 and then make sure these pawns are not ever in any danger. But here when knight f6, which is also a reasonable move here, but here bishop d6 is already a little bit not ideal, because here white can try to get the knight to c4, pressure the knight on d6, and eye this pawn on e5 here. So instead here after bishop d6, my opponent played bishop d1, which is the move that I expected, and I played bishop f5. And here I thought that they'd play bishop c2, but here they played bishop to a4. And this is where I thought for a few minutes on what to do, because here white is actually threatening to capture the pawn on e5, and when the bishop captures back, capture with the rook, since the knight on c6 is pinned by the bishop on a4. And so this is an actual threat on this pawn here. And also the d4 pawn, in some lines it could also be vulnerable here. So if for example black plays something like knight to d7, white captures, bishop takes c6, and here white can play knight takes d4 using this pin and double attacking the bishop and the pawn. And white is perfectly fine here and has probably already equalized the position. So this is not a good move here, knight d7, because of this capture. So I thought of the main move I was calculating here was bishop takes d3, and that was the line I went for. But instead I could have also played something like castles, and then played for after bishop takes. Here rook to e8 and play for all this activity. And even though the material is equal, black has an overwhelming advantage due to the development and white's pieces being a little bit slow to get out. So it's important that black is able to use this development to their advantage before white is able to move their bishop out, get their knight out, get every piece into the game, when white should be fine. So here knight c6, and the bishop was on a4. Here I played this move, bishop takes d3, which might not be the best move. Probably best is this castles move here, but I went bishop d3. And here my opponent could have first played knight takes c5, but they played bishop c6. I captured. They captured here. bishop takes e5. So this is all sort of forcing moves here from both sides. King to d7. And here my opponent played bishop f4. And here I was thinking also bishop b4 might be another option. But here I could also try something like knight to d5 and stop any checks and force this bishop to go back to a3. So with that being said, here my opponent played bishop f4, and I played knight to d5, bishop g3, and here's where I had an important decision. So I'm up a pawn here, but this pawn could get weak if black has enough time, if white has enough time to get the knight out. Then all of a sudden there's these threats with the knight coming to c5, forking the king and the bishop. So black's advantage is in the fact that the rooks are connected and they can try to exploit this development lead that black has here. So here probably the best move is rook b8. And just to show sort of an interesting line here is if white tries to liquidate with this tactic here, black doesn't have double d pawns, but more importantly here, the rook is going to quickly get in to the game, and then all of a sudden white's army has trouble coordinating and defending itself. So this is already very difficult type of position for white here. So let's go back here. And everything's here. And here, rook b8 is the best move here. But I thought also I could also just play this move here and try to get a lead on, try to offer this rook trade so I can maybe penetrate on the e file and get my rook into an active position. But here my opponent played knight d2, which is a very natural move, and all of a sudden it's not that easy for black here. I probably should have gone here, maybe f6. And then black has still a good, healthy advantage. With the pawn being somewhat still weak, but a lot of activity with the pieces. But instead, I saw this idea, knight b3, knight c5, forking the king and the bishop. So my idea was to do, to multitask with the knight here, bring the knight to c7. Once the knight comes to b3, bring my knight to e6, and here guard d4 and c5. So you can pause here. So we're back here after knight e6, and here this is all what happened in the game. And here white played rook d1 and bishop c2. Here a better move that would have already put me under some pressure is rook a5, swinging the rook over, and then once the pawn moves to a6, black has some difficulty in protecting these somewhat isolated pawns that are not connected, while white's pawns are nice and connected in these pawn islands here. So here already it's difficult for black to play after the sequence. But here my opponent played rook d2, bishop c2, and here I could have captured on b3 and played for c5. And in this case, my pawns are very, very healthy and connected, and white's pawns are sort of doubled on the b file. So here the knight was on b3, and I had just played bishop c2, rook d2, And here I actually went for bishop e1, which is a little bit of a questionable move here. So I thought that I was going to get some activity, and maybe even here in this line we played here. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d4. Rook takes d4. And here I am threatening to get back the pawn, of course, but white can easily defend this threat. And so here the king has only two lethal moves. Here king c7 or king c8. Here king c7 walks into this discovered check where white picks up all the material. So here king c8 is forced. And from here we had a3. I captured on e5. And here the idea I had, I'd seen until this point with f4, f6, and getting the rook involved. I'd seen this idea of trying to play and use this back rank weakness here. And importantly, my bishop is covering this e4 square from the rook. But here, white can't capture the bishop, can capture the pawn here because of the back rank mate. So going back, here white has only one way to defend this bishop, which is f4. And now already white is threatening bishop takes g7, so f6. And here I quickly play rook e2. And here my opponent plays rook b4, which is a good move, defending and also maybe threatening to get active on the 8th and 7th ranks here. So here I took a little bit of time. We were still running like, maybe we had like maybe 10 to 5 minutes left on the clock. So I thought a little bit here, and my idea that I wanted was I wanted to play bishop e4 and play rook takes g2, but the problem was here the king would go to f1, and if my rook wants to stay connected with the bishop, it has to go here, and now it's already being forced away. But the line goes on, but this is not ideal to capturing this pawn here. So I could here go f5, but then already this pawn chain is a little bit weak, and this is sort of a weakening move without keeping this pawn on the opposite color of the bishop. So here I played g6, and now this pawn is perfectly safe. So I played g6, and then here my opponent played I think it was a4 here, but let me check. So here my opponent actually played bishop c5 first, and then only later played a4. So I played bishop c5 here. So here white is threatening to capture the bishop, but if I move this pawn can't be really protected. It's a little bit weak here. So I decided to go for just the activity. And the reason why I played here f5 is I'm preparing this bishop e4 idea, and all my pawns are on the opposite color of their bishop, which does in one case sort of help my bishop in protecting everything. But also these light squares could possibly be weak if the rook gets behind the pawns. There could be some issues maybe with the pawn on g6 and pawn on h7 being a little bit vulnerable to attacks here. So here I played f5, bishop takes a7, but I'm still winning back the pawn here with bishop e4. And here my opponent had to play king f1. I captured. And then here, so let's see. So here my opponent played a4. And at this moment, I had around like 5 minutes. My opponent had 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And there was no increment. It was just only 5-second delay. So we both stopped annotating. And in the rest of the game, I remember from here. So I played a4. So they played a4, bishop d3, king g1, rook c2. And here they played a5. I played bishop e4. So here we are under a little bit of time pressure here with no extra time coming in. And here we had rook to b6 here. So here rook b6 was played by my opponent. I gave this check. We were both low on time. And here, actually my bishop was on d3, so it was here. It was rook b6. And now I checked on c1. So I gave this check on c1. And here, the most natural move is king f2, where it's not really easy to get anything going on this side, and white has the 2 pawns that can get connected and can pose a major problem here. And there's no way for me to really attack any of these pawns for white because they're all nice and connected. But here white can obviously go back behind the pawns and really create some big threats here. Objectively, the position's probably around equal, but this check only helps white if they play king f2. But to my surprise here, my opponent played king h2, and I spent maybe like 30 seconds because the move bishop e4 seems like it wins on the spot because I'm threatening rook to h1, checkmate with the pawn on g3, blocking the king's escape. So here, my opponent played rook to b8 check, and here I went king c7, and here what they played g4, and they tried to sacrifice a pawn. Here I could have just captured, but I gave this check, rook to h1, king g3 is the only move. And now here I played rook g1. We were both like maybe with like less than a minute on the clock, so I played rook g1. And I did notice the bishop on a7 could capture the rook on g1. But then after I made this move, I noticed that I have the rook on b8, which is also hanging. But my opponent didn't notice either somehow. And they played this move here. And I played rook takes g4. And then we had this position on the board here where I was up a pawn. So rook takes g4. And we can pause and try to assess the position. Here I have 3 pawns on the king side, 1 pawn on the queen side, which isn't really moving, but it is possibly gonna be, maybe if these pawns start moving up to b5, maybe this pawn could one day start moving, but these pawns are the real issue here. a4, e5. White is queening very quickly, so black has to be very accurate with the play here to not just end up in a completely worse position. So here, yeah, I captured on g4, and this position, despite being up a pawn, is not that easy to convert. Here, maybe I should have gave a check before capturing this pawn on g4 here, but I went for the immediate capture. We were both low on time. So rook h8, I played h5 here, and here my opponent played rook h7, and then here we can pause. So actually I think here they played actually the move first b4, and only later did they play this move rook to h7. So they played here b4, and now I played first I didn't want to take this pawn. I wanted to to stop these pawns because it was very close to promoting. And here actually I can't even capture this pawn in f4 because here, what's the tactic white to play and win here? In this position, the key awareness for spotting some sort of tactical pattern is noticing here that the king and the rook are aligned, and the bishop can sneak from behind and capture the rook via b1, b8. A hard move to see under time pressure, all the pieces sort of flying all over the board. But here I didn't capture this pawn on f4, which is the right move. I played here rook g2, and I played for here this move rook to a2. So let me check what the move was. So here, yeah, it's actually I played rook to b2. Sorry again for this move, but here the confusion was that here rook b2, rook a2. We were both like not notating at the end of the time scramble here. So this was basically off memory here, that I tried to not make this pawn move, but maybe try to delay it, and maybe try to put pressure on these queenside pawns here. So bishop c5, and here I played the move rook to a2, rook to h7, check, king c8. The pawn moved up to a5. I played bishop d3, and we started moving the pieces around. And here I moved my bishop to c4, and they went to e5 here. And so this is the position. Here they played bishop e5, and this position probably objectively equal, but my opponent had less than 10 seconds. They had 7 seconds on the clock. I had maybe around like 30 seconds on the clock left. And here the position's objectively equal again. There's pawns on both sides of the board, and both sides are sort of stopping any pawn pushes to promotion here. So here I played the move c5. I wanted to just liquidate and maybe get this, and maybe I can capture on a5 later. But here white could throw in this check and capture here, but objectively the position's still equal since I was up a pawn. But here actually my opponent flagged on the clock, and the position was still probably objectively equal. But it was a very complicated game. Overall, the opening phase went my way. Then the middle game, I didn't play the most accurately to hold on to the pawn. Then endgame, there were chances where I was threatening these checkmates here with the bishop. Here, the position like this. I was threatening rook to h1, and that was the moment where it was very difficult for white. White had to sort of sacrifice a pawn, and but in the end it was very complicated in the time scramble, and objectively it's probably equal at the end. So thanks for watching this game. Hope you have a nice day. See you on the next video. Bye. Also, a last minute notice also. Here, the PGN for the game is going to be an Elite Chess study, which will be in the YouTube description, so you can look down below in the channel. And I hope you enjoyed this game.